I've been to Harvard. Hey, but that's just
Congratulations.
as a videotape
Yeah.
person, assistant, if you will. We went to Harvard to do a story. I don't even remember what.
Yes.
But my gosh, there was a different atmosphere there for sure, ¿no?
Yes.
Que gente de todas partes del mundo con sus, well, they're different people.
I totally agree. You know, at the University of Denver Law School, everybody knew everybody, and we were friends and helped, loaned notes. You could leave your stuff in the library; everybody would take care of it. But it was totally different at Harvard, a different atmosphere. There, it was so competitive, and the individuals, the Harvard people, they were very competitive because they wanted to be number one in everything. Well, I went, this little old boy from Reserve, I was there, and I never, joined clubs or had a social life or anything because I had to have a high average. I had to have an A average.
You studied a lot.
Yes, and then I finished. It's a 2-year program, the LLM, Masters of Law. The first year, you take advanced law courses, and I focused on constitutional law courses with the best professors in the world there. Wow. And I got to be friends with them.
Great.
And in the second year, you write your thesis.
Your thesis?
Well, I did both in 1 year.
Wow.
I wanted to get back to my state of New Mexico. Mi papá y todo.
Oh, qué bueno.
And,
Familia.
Sí, pobrecito. Cuando le dije que I had been offered a scholarship at Harvard,
Ay, no lo creía.
pues, he didn't know where Harvard was. Me
Fíjate.
preguntó, pues, ¿dónde está? Where is it? And I said, I told him where it was. Oh, he said, pero hijo, está tan lejos.
Yeah.
Y aquí tenemos trabajos en la maquinita, la sawmill.
Yeah.
I said, pero papá, es la mejor escuela en el mundo y yo quiero ir. Bueno, hijo, que Dios te bendiga y te ayude.
Oh.
And I went to Harvard, but it was totally different from DU because you could not leave your notes in the library because they'd take, not to use them, but to get an advantage on you. And you could not borrow anybody's notes. So you attended every class, you took your own notes, and you relied on your own.
Right.
Nobody else would have loaned me there. So it was that competitive.
Yeah.
And but I kept my scholarship, and I did it in 1 year.
Wow.
And I
Hear,
enjoyed
hear.
Boston, Cambridge, because, on weekends I'd get out to Cape Cod and so forth.
Well, Chief Justice Serna, I have a PhD from a beautiful university, the University of Chimayo.
Híjole,
Aprendí todo lo que sé.
qué suave. Pues yo también tengo uno de Cruzville.
Cruzville, órale.
Sí, I was born there, and
Right on.
no doctors ni nada.
Beautiful people to teach you the
midwife
ropes,
came,
huh?
And
You bet. I see.
that's where I was born.
Yep.
But no, talking about Harvard, I'll be honest with you that I studied hard, but I learned a lot and met a lot of people, and it has opened so many doors.
Sure.
Because when they see my credentials, Harvard, I'd be given opportunities, openings, assignments, and everything.
Yes.
So having that Harvard law degree has opened many doors, including the one in Washington, D.C., where I spent 4 years as assistant to Commissioner Raymond Tejas of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And that's what got me in there, because he took me up there for an interview. And after I told him everything, he hired me. And I spent a wonderful 4 years with him. He was the first mayor, Hispanic mayor of El Paso.
Oh,
and
fíjate.
he integrated the banks, the schools, the theaters, everything, because it was the blatant racism,
Yes, blatant
discrimination. But he opened the doors, and I learned so much from him.
And You know, speaking of people who really help you along, you know, Benjamin Hooks used to be the chairman of the Federal Communications
Oh, yes,
Commission
yes.
while I was vying
Of
for a
course,
job.
I've heard of him
And
very
he
much.
told them no uncertain terms, all broadcasters that wanted to renew their licenses,
Yes.
let's see those scales.
See.
Let's even up those scales. And I came
Exact-
along with my credentials.
Yeah.
I went to school for
Yeah.
the engineering end of radio and television.
Yeah.
I got and earned my first class at Federal
Yeah.
Communications
Yeah.
license.
Yeah.
And so I show up, right? And they were looking for
That's right.
minorities to even the balance
That's
thing.
exactly right.
Would you
Yeah.
believe when I showed up, I got hired among many, many applicants. And about a week or two later, I had this one coworker who'd been there 70 years maybe. And
Yeah.
he had it written all over his face. He was
Yeah.
just disgruntled. So he told me flat out, you know why they hired you? Because you're a minority.
Yeah.
Ooh, that was the first
see.
week I was there. And I said, respectfully, I said, and I said that in all due respect, sir.
Yeah.
They may have hired me to balance the scales, but they won't keep me if I ain't worth a hoot. And he se quedó callado.
Qué
you
bueno,
know.
qué bueno
Y
que
I
le
felt good after
hiciste.
that.
Sí,
Y nunca se me
sí,
olvida su nombre. Ojalá que, bueno, he's long gone, pero what a. But anyway, he made me realize, hey, you know, yeah, maybe so. They're trying to
Yes.
balance the scales in broadcasting,
Yes.
but they're not going to keep me if,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. Well,
So
you know,
I triumphed, if I may
that's
say.
great. Well, when I got to Harvard, I was the only Hispanic in the LLM program.
I
There was
believe.
one or possibly two in the regular program.
Wow.
And I talked to the dean, and he was,
He said-
acceptable
Yeah.
and accepting me
Right.
and concerned. And I told him, we need more. So he said, we'll give them scholarships. You know, if they earn a scholarship, we'll give them a scholarship. And they sent me to recruit Hispanics in Colorado and in New Mexico, and I did. And I'd make appointments at the universities, and I would address the Hispanics and tell them to apply and how to do it and everything else. And so
Bada bing.
I got a lot more. When I left, there were already quite a few more that I had recruited. So I'm glad that I did that little bit to open the doors at Harvard to more
Hispanics,
Chicanos,
Latinos.
Latinos,
Yeah.
Hispanics. Yes. So no,
You did quite a bit to influence. And so for that, a lot of people, thank you. Thank you for this interview. I'm telling you, Chief Justice. Does someone for the rest of your life should call you Chief Justice, just like Ambassador Ed Romero. He's always going to be an ambassador.
the message I would like to give to the youth of America, not only Hispanics, Latinos, Puerto Ricanos, Cubanos, but all Americans, because we're all Americans and we all have this opportunity to make something of ourselves and to help everyone, and that is this. And I go back to my sister Isabel's advice, because that's what got me where I am today. And I'm still achieving things today that I dream about and picture myself. But this is my advice to the youth of America. Picture yourself where you want to be, what you want to be. And also, along with that, be determined to do it. And very, very important, believe in yourself and your abilities and what you can do, because you can do it. I was able to do it by doing that, picturing myself as a lawyer, determined to get there, believing I could do it, and I did it. I have 3 law degrees, really. I have one from the University of Denver, I have one from Harvard, and then the University of Denver gave me their highest law degree. I have a JD, an LLM, and an SJD. That's a Doctor of Laws. I did that when I gave the commencement address there at my alma mater. So, please, all of you, picture yourself where you want to be. Always. And be determined to achieve it. And believe in yourself. Believe you can do it, because you can do it. I did it, and you can do it too. Believe me. Thank you very much.
I got to wrap it up, and just thank you so much for the time you have taken. We're going to do it again. I hope you
we do,
want to
because
come
I've
back
got
and talk
a lot
more
of
about your fruitful, colorful life.
Stories to tell you about being a Hispanic, even in traveling and so forth. But I'll save those for next time.
You got it. You're an interesting señor con mucha nobilidad, nobility. And all
Pues ya
of that.
estoy más viejo que el aire,
Más
85.
viejo que el aire. No, hardly. And you're aging gracefully. That's what I hear all the time from various people, just like your buddy, your good friend, Ed. So thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
Hasta las otras pizcas. I guess I'd say that. I don't know where that came from.
Sí. Pero yo te doy las gracias del fondo de mi corazón, sinceramente.
Gracias. And here's a retirement tribute to Justice Serna by Griego Productions that I think you'll enjoy, and I'd love to share it with you.
Now that I've retired and I can meditate and reflect on my life, I always come back to Isabel's advice to me as a young boy. Her advice, Pat, you can be whatever you want to be. Picture yourself there. And don't worry how you're going to get there. But Pat, always be positively focused, determined, believe in yourself, and you will achieve whatever you set your mind to. And I've achieved much in my life, but it goes back to that advice that my dear sister instilled in me as a little boy. And that advice enabled me to achieve the American dream.
from the small village of Reserve to the College of St. Joseph on the Rio Grande, the first of his 8 siblings to go to college, then to law school at the University of Denver, and on to Harvard, and eventually to the Supreme Court of New Mexico, a court on which he has served with great distinction for the past 16 years. Justice Serna's life is an American success story. It's a story of determination, a story of making the most of every opportunity, of opening doors that once had been shut tight. Patricio Serna followed his dreams, but most importantly, he helped so many others to follow their dreams too.
I was born in Cruzville, New Mexico, which is about 7 miles outside of Reserve, where I really grew up. And I was born at home because in those days there were no doctors. Midwife came and I was born in Cruzville. And it's not on the map. And we moved to Reserve at a very early age. I really don't remember if my mother passed away before we moved to Reserve. My mother was a Moya, passed away at age 37. So I really didn't know my mother. And my father, Pablo Serna, was left with 8 children. My oldest sister was Isabel, 14 years old at the time, and then my brother Ruben, and then my other sisters, Helen, Lori, Lena, Dulcie, and of course my baby sister Rosalie. So 6 girls and 2 boys.
I think the fact that Pat was born in the log cabin in Cruzville, New Mexico, and was raised in Reserve, New Mexico, truly in the log cabin. He was in the poorest guy in town, truly. I can tell you, I've known him since I was born. The fact that he was born and came to the place he is now. I mean, Pat, this is an incredible evening for a kid from Reserve, New Mexico. The question is, how does somebody get from there to here? There have to be lessons here.
We still have that log house at Reserve. We preserved it the way Daddy had it. 3 rooms, a large kitchen. We didn't have electricity at first. Later on, the REA put electricity, because I remember that we used to use the kerosene lamps, and I'd read by them, study by them, and so forth, but then electricity came.
I think what drives him is he has never forgotten his roots. I was blessed with the opportunity when I first came on this court to go to Reserve, New Mexico. That's where he was born and raised. And the blessing I had was to be able to stand in the kitchen of his 3-room house where Patricio grew up. And I listened to him revisit the joys of his humble past that helped shape his conscience. And to me, that was very moving. And I think Patricio just hasn't forgotten his roots. And he wants to make sure that all people in America have that opportunity to make a better life for themselves and for their families while enjoying the riches of freedom, but also the security of justice. And he is very committed to those ideals.
When I started school, I didn't know how to speak English, because all we spoke at home was Spanish. And when they'd catch me with my friends speaking Spanish, they'd get a big ruler and whack us. So we did learn English very fast. I can remember that we were in a 1-room school, and we had this project where the teacher said, I want a report on what you ate for a week. And so my sister Rosalie and I, of course, having the same teacher, we coordinated. And for example, we'd say, well, for breakfast we had bacon and eggs and toast. Or we'd say we had oatmeal. or cream of wheat. And for lunch, we had bread, and we had spaghetti, and we had corn, and then for dinner we'd say fried chicken and things. Frankly, we coordinated so that the teacher wouldn't catch us, but the fact of the matter is that all we used to eat was beans and chili, because my grandmother was with us, and oh, she was a great cook, but that was it. You know, beans and chili, and every now and then we'd have meat. A wonderful Christmas that I remember when I was about 5 years old. We had a little tree with a couple of balls and some tinsel. And the gift that Rosalie and I got that year was a roll of Lifesavers. And oh, I loved that. It lasted me about 3.5 months because I would break every piece into 4 pieces and savor each piece. Rosalie went through hers pretty quick, but I did share mine, you know, and I'd break them up, I'd share with her. And it's such a special Christmas because we had all the family there, family unity and love. And that's what Christmas is to me. You know, when I retired, a dear friend of mine gave me a memento, and it was Lifesavers framed. And one of them is even broken into 4 pieces. And I'm proud of that. Isn't that a great memento with great history?
I actually wanted to give a special thank you to former Governor Anaya, because I understand my parents actually met when they were campaigning for you. And so I'm grateful that you ran for office. My sister and I might not be up here tonight. So thank you for that. Without further ado, it's with great honor and pride that I introduce my father, fresh off the bench, retired Justice Patricio Serna.
After Patricio and I met on the campaign trail, we married in 1981 and had our children, and of course a lot of wonderful times with his family and mine. And I come from pretty much the same background as Patricio, you know, not of money or anything like that. So we knew how to struggle. We're survivors.
I had my first experience litigating in a court in New Mexico today, and that was very exciting because it was at the courthouse that my dad started out at when I was 5 years old. You know, I have a picture of when he was getting sworn in, of when I was really little, and I was standing right next to him getting sworn in at that courthouse. So that was a really special experience to go there today. And actually, we were in one of his old courtrooms, and so, you know, the room seemed a lot smaller today, but familiar, and light fixtures I remember, and it was really exciting.
Justice Serna in 2001, in a speech that he gave, he said, "For someone like me, without a heritage of wealth or social position, to have gone to college, law school, been a district court judge, Supreme Court justice, and now Chief Justice, demonstrates so well that the American dream is available to us and our children."
You know, another thing that happened about the same time about the Lifesaver story is that I got empachado, and I really don't know the English word for it, but empachado. And my Uncle Celedon's wife, Aunt Clara, she was a curandera. And so I was home in bed, and she came over to, you know, help me. But she said, "We need a very fresh egg so that I can heal Pat." And so my sisters, they went out to get the freshest egg that they could find. And Don Ramon Jaramillo, one of our neighbors, had a chicken coop, had chickens, a gallinero, and they found the freshest egg. The chicken was still on it, and they brought it. It was still warm. And of course, it had a couple of feathers still on it, but that was a fresh egg. So my Aunt Clara was so happy to get such a fresh egg. And what she did, I laid down. I was already in bed, but I laid down, and she cracked the egg and moved the yolk around tenderly with her fingers. And at a certain point in my stomach, the egg yolk busted. And she said, "That's donde está empachado." And I had my eyes closed, I guess, because I don't remember what she did. But I was cured. My empachado was cured. And I know it's an old folks remedy, but I'm a witness to say that it did work.
I think that the public will remember Justice Serna as an extremely well-loved and respected justice. And let me add, you know, as a public official, there's discussion about openness in government and how important it is for the people to see and understand what how government operates. He's an extraordinary spokesperson for the judiciary in that regard. He treats the judiciary as if it belongs to the people. And when people engage with him and talk with him, they really do believe that the judiciary is theirs.
I got very, very good grades all through school. At the high school, I played basketball. I was short, but we didn't have that many players, and so I played on the first 5. And I was editor of the school newspaper, and I used to draw the cartoons also. And when I finished high school, the local priest, Father Bob Kirsch, asked me, "Pat, are you going to go to college?" And I said, "No, Father Bob, I'm not." Because nobody from Reserve, you know, went to college. Nobody from my family had ever gone to college. And he said, "Come with me." So we went uptown, which wasn't far, and on a telephone pole, the only public phone in town. And he called the president of the College of St. Joseph on the Rio Grande, Sister Viatora. And I can remember to this day, he said, "Sister Viatora, this is Father Bob Kirsch from Reserve, New Mexico, and I've got this young man here, Pat Serna. And sister, he's got straight A's, he's class president, and I was wondering if you could give him a scholarship to St. Joe's." And I was training to listen, and I heard her tell Father Bob, "Father Bob, this is what we can do for Pat. We can give him a scholarship for half tuition and a job for the other half. He'll have to maintain a very high grade point average to keep the scholarship." And Father Bob said, "He'll be there, sister." And that's how I got to college. And so when I got to St. Joe's, they didn't have dormitories. And so I lived in the boiler room with 4 other young men, all Hispanics. And we each had a cot. I remember the big pipes on top. I worked 5 summers fighting forest fires on the Gila while I was in college. I graduated with honors, and I loved going to St. Joe's. And thinking back, it was perfect for me, because had I gone to the university, I'd have been lost with all those people. St. Joe's only had 500 total. Everybody knew everybody, and it was like a family. I graduated from St. Joe's in May, And then, guess what? In June, I got a letter from the President of the United States. I was drafted into the Army to Fort Polk, Louisiana for basic training. I enjoyed my 2 years in the Army very, very much. Well, after leaving the military, I came back to my beloved New Mexico, and I got a job as a probation parole officer here in Santa Fe, and then I was made in charge of the Las Cruces office, so I was there. And actually that was my first exposure to lawyers, because I would do pre-sentence reports, and then I'd go to the sentencing of the defendant. And the judge would ask the attorney, what do you have to say about your client? And the attorneys would say, Your Honor, we have nothing to add to the pre-sentence report. And I'm the one that prepared the pre-sentence report. So I thought, my gosh, you know, I'm really doing the work of the attorneys. I want to be an attorney. And that's when I pictured myself as an attorney, following my sister's advice.
He is a man of fairness, and certainly that's one of the tenets of his judicial philosophy. Fairness to the individual, I think, is what would be paramount to him.
When I was in Las Cruces, it turned out that Dean Yegi of the University of Denver School of Law applied for and got a fellowship, Ford Foundation grant, I think of $50,000. And they had a summer program for Chicanos, because there were no Chicano Latino attorneys in the Southwest. And so 20 of us went from New Mexico and Colorado, and 11 made the grade that summer, and we were given a full fellowship for 3 years at the University of Denver Law School.
Patricio's passion with education, I think, is always summarized in the consejos, the advice that he offers to young people who are sworn in the bar. And I think what he emphasizes is the fact that their education is a tool by which they can make a difference in society.
The experiences at the University of Denver were just wonderful. We formed MALSA, and that stands for Mexican American Law Students Association. And we established a law office in the barrio where we were helping the people with legal services in the barrio while still in law school. My 3 years at the law school, I did well. I was the first Latino on the law review. And I kept a very high grade point average, A's. And ironically, I got offered a fellowship at Harvard Law School for an LLM, that's a Master's of Law.
I just found this out, that New Mexico reporters are no longer going to be put into books. They're going to only be in computers. I didn't know that. Pat told me this. What that means is the last 30 volumes of New Mexico reports are the last written documents on a book that are going to contain opinions, and Pat's in all of those 30 volumes. And there are over 200 opinions.
And when I told my father about Harvard, he said, well, first of all, he had never heard of Harvard, and he asked me where it was located, and I told him, and he said, pero hijo, está tan lejos, y aquí tenemos trabajos en la maquinita, which is, but son, it's so far away, and we have jobs here in the sawmill. And I said, pero papá, es la mejor escuela de leyes en el mundo, y quisiera ir. But I said, Dad, it's the best law school in the world. I'd sure like to go. And he said, bueno, hijo, que te ayude Dios. But, okay, son, and may God be with you. And so I went to Harvard, and it was quite a different experience in the University of Denver because everything's so competitive. You can't leave your notes in the library because they'll take them just to gain an advantage, and you can't miss a class because nobody will lend you their notes. So it's so competitive. And the LLM program is a 2-year program. The first year you take courses. And of course, again, I had to have a very high grade point average to keep the fellowship. But I'm happy to say I kept it. And the second year you write your thesis. Well, I knew that I was going to not get much sleep. And I never did. I never went to bed before 3 o'clock when I was at Harvard. But I did the program in 1 year instead of 2. They loved my thesis. It was on Spanish and Mexican land grants, and I had the best law library in the world there to do all that research. The reports of the Court of Private Land Grant Claims, the reports on the Office of Surveyor General, everything. And I always say, you know, that on the same day they established that Court of Private Land Grant Claims, they established the U.S. Forest Service. And when that court closed down years later, the U.S. Supreme Court had not really interpreted the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and they said that the common lands reverted to the sovereign and only the private ejidos would be confirmed. And so the Forest Service gained millions of acres of land when they closed that Court of Private Land Grant Claims. And of course the Office of Surveyor General had been so corrupt, and there they approved land grants politically, some involving 200,000-300,000 acres because of the common lands, but then so much corruption that they shut it down, and then they established the Court of Private Land Grant Claims. But my thesis went into all that.
It is because of our soul that we are. When I think of Justice Serna, I do not immediately think of his titles. I don't think of his distinguished accomplishments, because all that is overshadowed by his humility, his smile, his gentleness, his unassuming, quick intellect, his decency, his soul. Justice Serna is first and foremost a good man. Es un buen hombre. I think that Justice Serna's greatest tribute is that he has a soul that touches the best of us. And that is the commonality that has brought us here tonight. So I come as a witness of the effect that Justice Serna has had at the national level. I rise and I stand here before you to give testimony to the impact and effect that Justice Serna has had and will continue to have on thousands upon thousands of people throughout this great land.
And while I was at Harvard, there were very few of us. And so we formed La Raza Law Students Association, but we had to get the other law schools in the Boston area to join too, so that we could have enough to have a meeting. Even then we only had about 12 members, but we'd get together and we'd cook Mexican food and really established a close relationship. And I've stayed in touch with these people. They've gone on to do great things. After I got out of Harvard, I went to Washington, D.C. as special assistant to Commissioner Raymond Tellez. He was the first Latino mayor of El Paso, Texas. And he integrated the police department, the fire department, the theater, the country club, everything. And then Kennedy appointed him. When he ran for the second term, he had no opposition. And then at that conclusion, Kennedy appointed him ambassador to Costa Rica, where he served 7 years. He was beloved. He was my mentor from 19 1971 that I went to join him in Washington until he passed away 2 weeks ago, just a few months shy of 98 years. Also, while I was there, at night I taught at 2 law schools, at Georgetown Law School and at Catholic Law School. And it was a seminar. It was an advanced constitutional litigation course. And those were the civil rights days. And I titled the course La Raza and the Law. And I talked about the migrant farm workers. I talked about land grants, about education, about employment, all those areas that were hot at that time. And I had students at both schools from New Mexico.
I think what Justice Serna leaves behind for Latinos and everyone else who have the desire to serve is the example of a man who has come from extremely humble roots, has worked extremely hard, has in many ways been driven by a dream to succeed, has had the abilities to succeed, the personality to succeed, and has, despite been in difficult situations, has been nevertheless able to succeed and achieve his dream.
From Washington, I came back in the fall of 1975, and I came back as Deputy Attorney General to Attorney General Tony Anaya. Tom Dunnigan and I were the co-deputies, and I served for 4 years there at the Attorney General's office. And then I went into private practice for 7 years. And by that time, Tony was governor, and he appointed me to the district court here in Santa Fe. And I proudly served there for 12 years. And I was chief judge for 2 terms.
I was a state employee as well. I continued to work and raise the family, and especially when Pat's involvement with the court meant being gone from home and having to put in quite a bit of work. So I took over family responsibilities, homework and cooking and groceries and practices and things like that. But we were also very encouraged and happy for him in district court. So we gave him the time he needed, and we went on with what we did. He, in turn, was always very supportive of what we were doing and encouraged us.
In '96, a position opened at the state Supreme Court, and actually that had been my goal. I wanted to be a lawyer, I became one. I wanted to be a judge, I became one. And then I wanted to go to the Supreme Court, and the time was there, because it takes time, and I went for it. I was up for retention on the district court, but no, I rolled the dice and went for it, always following what my sister had told me, to picture myself there. And I put 60,000 miles on my car, and halfway through it conked out, but I got another used car, and went all over the state. Because the harder you work in politics, the more people you meet, so that they can see who you are and who they're voting for. I won.
One of the things I can remember growing up is campaigning. I remember campaigning for my dad when I was little. I remember campaigning for him when I was in high school for the Supreme Court, and it's really hard. It puts a lot of miles on your car, on your feet, and your handshakes, and I think what I learned was even when you're home alone, I think even when nobody's looking, I think what's important is my dad really is always what he appears to be. You know, he's not a different person when people aren't looking. He's very, very sweet and very humble, and you know, he visits viejitos in the middle of nowhere. He's like a really caring, sweet man, and I think that's what's helped him all these years is people can see his sincerity.
His desire to be in the Supreme Court was important to him, and so he actually put his job on the line and went for the Supreme Court without being able to return to district court if he should lose the race. And so that was a big decision for the family. But he did succeed, and we've always been very proud of him.
Justice Serna.
Jose.
It's great to see you, my friend.
Oh, good to see you.
Came to congratulate you on your upcoming retirement from the Supreme Court.
Thank you.
This seal really is very symbolic for our community.
Oh, yes.
You have attained the highest level in the courts
Yes.
in our state, and this is something that you know, a lot of our young people can dream toward, because individuals like yourself have forged that road for us.
When I spent my day with him in Reserve, New Mexico, everywhere we went, people were ecstatic to see him. In fact, I think it's their magistrate court that they have actually named after him. They have a nice portrait of him as you enter the magistrate court, and of course they recount the history that their Patricio Serna is now on the highest court in the state of New Mexico.
A mutual friend of mine, Nelson Martinez, said that he had received a letter from one Patricio Serna on September 27, 1970, and he ran a copy and gave it to me. And Patricio is writing to him, just having gotten to Harvard a few weeks thereafter. ¿Cómo estás? He says, how are you? ¿Cómo está la familia? How's the family? And then he goes on to say, and I'll just read one paragraph. We're organizing a Chicano student organization in this area, Paren, including Harvard, MIT, Boston University, Wellesley, Radcliffe. And our initial concern is recruitment of more Chicanos. Consequently, I will be going to either New Mexico or Colorado for 1 week at mid-November to recruit Chicano students for the schools in this area. So he was a troublemaker even way back, way back in those days. But it seems to me that to reach the ideal that Abraham Lincoln spoke to us, that standard maxim, we can't be defeated, because right now we have 50% of the children in New Mexico, Chicano children, dropping out of school. We say this is a problem, but there's a standard maxim that we have to reach, and that standard maxim is to make sure that number keeps being reduced until all the children, one way or another, get the inspiration that folk like Justice Serna got when he was a youngster. Thank you very much.
I'm going to make myself available to go speak at schools throughout the state, because not just in Albuquerque, not just in Santa Fe, but in Roswell, in Clovis, because they need to have mentors that they can look up to. And I think that I have a good life story to share with them and to inspire them, because they can do it. So I plan to do that.
When I would go around the state, the question I would get asked most often was, oh, you're the Supreme Court up in Santa Fe? Do you know my good friend Patricio Serna? I'm sure you all know. You all know what I mean. I think he has understood that the work of this court, the doing of justice, is a matter not only of the head but of the heart. And he has really helped check the heart of justice alive in New Mexico. And it's reflected in his opinions. I'll just mention a couple of them. His work will be enshrined forever in these books that contain our opinions. And I was just counting them. I believe this was the first volume where Justice Serna's opinions appeared, volume 123 back in 1997. And by my count, he has now had his opinions, his authorships, in 28 volumes. of the New Mexico report. It's an important part of the legacy of the Supreme Court of the state.
I think it's on the airplane, he goes to Seattle, Washington, where the Hispanic National Bar Association is going to do a Lifetime Achievement Award. And that's a very fitting award because Patricio, along with Mario Deno and Cruz Reynoso, Dan Sosa Jr., Steve Herrera, judge here in Santa Fe, they were some of the first members of that organization. A couple of weeks after that, he goes to San Antonio, Texas. In Albany, they gave him another Lifetime Achievement Award. In the end, he was one of the pioneers in the MOLDET program. The only reason I say this to you is because what it tells me, and what it should tell you, is that as Justice Serna has climbed the ladder of success, he has always made time to reach down and help others out. He's just the kind of person he is. I love him like a brother, and I miss him, and I look forward to the days that we will get together and reminisce about the times on the court, the times at Reserve in Mexico. And Eloise, good luck with that honeymoon.
So Pat, I can tell you when you leave this job, this position, you leave with your head held high, you leave with your reputation and your good name not only intact, but furnished, enhanced by your years of service. And on behalf of the Judiciary of New Mexico, I want to thank you for lending that good name to our profession.
I'm going to quote one of his favorite quotes that he begins with. This one is from the Bible, and it begins with, "To everything there is a season, and a time to a purpose under the heavens." Well, as I was reading that passage in the Bible, I found an additional line that I think is very important to what's been going on for the last couple of months. It also says, "The time to give, and a time to lose, time to keep, and a time to cast away." And I think you've been doing a lot of keeping and casting away as you've been going through his office and making decisions about what you wanted to take with him and what he wanted to cast. I would add another line to this passage: the time to retire, the time to and the time to create the next chapter of your life.
The title is Irish Retirement. May you always have work for your hands to do. May your pockets hold always a coin or two. May the sun shine bright on your window pane. May the rainbow be certain to follow each ray. May the hand of a friend always be near you. And may God fill your heart with gladness to cheer you.
Now that I'm retired, I'm going back to my painting. I'm going to have to start from scratch, getting brushes, canvases, the acrylics, but I've got great ideas. I was getting into sunsets, and they are so beautiful here in New Mexico. That's Heron Lake, and I got the reflection of the mountain and that little sailboat. And this is the town of Cordova. Everyone should go there. The streets are narrow like this. And then this one here is around Chimayo also. And I put geraniums in the window. Now that's towards Reserve, because notice the lack of vegetation. This was in the St. Augustine Plains. I'm going to get back, now that I'm retired, to my painting. You know, in looking back at my life, my entire life, I can say that family, close family ties are so important.
It was a great honor for me and my family to be part of this. We enjoyed it thoroughly and learned a lot, and we're still learning.
Ever since he grew up, he got to go to a lot of different places. He got to go to DC, he got to go to Boston, but he always came back, and he always wanted to come back, and he will always love this state. And he's shown that in his public service. He's shown that in what he continues to do, which is be a member of a lot of boards. He loves to travel. He wants to photograph the state. He loves his state. All the paintings you see here that he's done today are just of New Mexico landscapes. And so I think that's what's really inspiring too, is for people from New Mexico, kids from New Mexico, people that are born here in small towns. You know, even you should go see the world, but it's always nice to come back home and to really to serve your community and to serve your hometown and make it a better place and to inspire those around you the way my dad has done in his community, the way he's done here, the way he's done for us.
I found myself and my pride in my culture, in my people, in my food, in my music. And so I am so happy that I have this deep appreciation for chili and beans and matanzas and curanderas and everything that really is the essence of my culture and of me. I'm so proud that through my life I have been able to make a positive difference in the lives of all our people, and I've tried and I've accomplished bringing justice, access to justice, equal access to justice for all people in New Mexico.
This night has been exemplified by harmony amongst all of us here, by love and joy. And I want to thank each one of you for being with us and being part of this one of the best nights of my life, because I was with you and my family was with you, and the speakers that we had and what they said. So, muchas gracias. Que Dios los bendiga. Thank you, and may God bless you always.
He wants to inspire and to motivate the youth of today, and he does it by recounting his history and then telling them with these closing words, if I can do it, you can do it. He's a great inspiration for the youth of today.
Soy un nuevo mexicano y un verdadero chicano. Yo nací en un pueblo pequeño, muy humilde, pobre y sincero, y ahora les voy a cantar de mi pueblo natural. El pueblo en que yo nací lleva por nombre La Joya, donde vivían mis parientes, mis amigos, los griegos, romanos y los moyas. Y ahora les quiero cantar de mi estado popular. Arriba Nuevo México, arriba mi estado querido, arriba mi Albuquerque y arriba con toda su gente. Arriba Nuevo.
The Honorable Patricio Serna. Thank you for watching The Spanglish Show with Nelson Martinez.